Nothing in you guys. My name is Kelly. I'm going to be taking you guys on this tour today. We'll talk a little bit about Intel's history and early products, and then we'll talk a little bit about Moore's Law and how chips are made. Sound good? Oh, fantastic. All right, so Intel was founded in 1968 by Robert Noyce and Gord Thorne. The photograph that you see here was taken at our 1-year anniversary, but when we began, it was just Robert and Gordon and about a dozen engineers. Now, the reason that they were able to start off that small and grow to the size that we are today was helped because of Andy Grove. We won't talk a lot about him in the tour, much to my chagrin, right? I love Andy Grove, and if you get a chance to read any of his books, I highly recommend it. He's wonderful, wonderful businessman. But Robert and Gordon were, of course, legends in their own rights. Robert had co-invented the integrated circuit, and Gordon had written Moore's Law by 1965. He was also a well-renowned chemist, right, as well as being an engineer. So these guys had even already started a company together called Fairchild Semiconductors. While they were working there, making innovations to the integrated circuits, what they were really looking towards was making innovations in magnetic core memory. Robert and Gordon were looking at that backwards and forwards, and they figured there had to be a way that they could make that bet. What they were missing was money, right? Classic problem, right? Yeah, always missing the money for things. So Robert and Gordon went to the board of Fairchild and asked for money to do research and development on supplanting magnetic core memory. Fairchild said no. And no uncertain terms, they said, absolutely not, we're not giving you money for research. So Robert and Gordon decided that they were going to branch out on their own. They got some investment from a man named Arthur Rock, and they were able to buy the building that you see up here from a company called the Union Carbide Chemical Manufacturing. Yeah, it's big, heavy name carried out there. They were not quite finished moving out by the time Intel moved in. So Robert and Gordon and a little dozen engineers moved into a conference room in that building right there. Now at this point, Andy heard that they were leaving and said, okay, I'm gonna go with you guys. They didn't even ask him. He just invited himself along to the ride. Thank goodness. This photograph was taken, like I said, at our 1-year anniversary. We had grown to just over 100 people by that time, and today Intel employs 75,000 people about all around the world. Despite that growth, our main focus has remained the same. Not the memory chips, obviously, but Robert and Gordon, when they began their company, knew they didn't want to just make memory chip innovations. They wanted to make electronic innovations, right? Yes.
Oh, I just wanted to point out that there's a heck of a lot of women working there.
Yes, there has always been a lot of women always involved in the maths and sciences, usually in the background. By this time, we had thankfully started bringing more women to the foreground, but yeah, it is something that I definitely enjoy singing. So,
Good.
one more question. Yes,
Which city is this in?
Mountain View. Mountain View, yeah, Mountain View, California. So when Robert and Gordon were trying to come up with a name for their company, they were originally just going to use their names to kind of bolster their new electronics company. But when you say more noise a little fast, yeah, it sounds like more noise, and they felt that that was not something they wanted to attach right next to their electronics. So they said, well, we'll just go with our initials at M Electronics, but, New Mexico's a desert for a reason, right? So they didn't want to go with the NM Electronics. That was not holding to the legendary status that they wanted to try to bank out of. So they needed to decide what they wanted to do. They wanted to make innovations, obviously. They knew that they were going to get there by using people, right? Having all these people in their company, and they had to figure out what it was they actually wanted to do. It wasn't just innovating. They wanted to innovate electronics, but to what end, for what purpose? They wanted to figure out a way to integrate these electronics not only with each other, but also into the lives of people, because the more people that have access to electronics, the more people want from them, so on and so on. We'll get into that with Moore's Law. So they decided that's what their name was going to be. They were going to integrate electronics. That's what their name was going to be. Intel. Our dropped E logo was born July 18, 1968. Intel began production 2 weeks later on August 1st, with the very first goal being to do research and development on getting rid of magnetic core memory. It only took them 9 months to actually come to market with their very first memory chip. Now, these magnetic core memories is where we started. You've got some little ones there. They also got bigger. They turned into the 3101s that you see on the front there. This was huge. In 1969, it's the first memory chip that we have. No one could wait to get their hands on this brand new technology. When they did, however, what they found was that Intel had simply taken the magnetic core technology and shrunk it down so that it fit on the microchip. It did solve a lot of the issues that we had with the magnetic core memory, but it also meant that it was very easy for other companies to replicate our 3101. And so Intel said, well, we've got to figure out how to make this better, right? There's got to be a better way that we can make this microchip happen, this memory chip happen. And the best way that you can make something better is to first make it cheaper. So Robert and Gordon took a look around this area that we had already nicknamed Silicon Valley by 1968 and said, well, what if we took this super cheap silicon that they're basically giving away and put it inside of our microchip? And the entire industry laughed at us, because who is going to put an insulator inside of an electronic microchip? That's impossible to do. And Gordon, and very happily in the very beginning of 1970, said, well, here's our very first electronic, or silicon microchip. And here is the second. 2 silicon memory chips in 1970, by 1970. Were released, the 1101 down there and then the 1103 up top here. If you look through the bubble here, you can see some of the circuitry, and then if you look through the side, you can see just how small that chip actually is.
So the chip that outer. See, small. You can see it. Like we scum me.
It is smaller than your fingernail. And kind of in memory capabilities also. It is only an 8-bit memory chip, which means if I wanted to back up all of the cute little puppy pictures on my 64-gigabyte phone, it would take 5.89 billion of those chips. So my phone would be humongous, and I would not be carrying this thing around.
Chip it on. I know.
So, no, yeah, at the time it was absolutely revolutionary, and it also led to the next invention, which actually changed the way computers work, the way we work with computers. And that came in 1969 thanks to Nippon Calculating Machine Company approaching our little 100-man company and asking offering Robert $60,000 to produce 12 silicon memory chips. Now, Robert did not know how he was going to make this happen. His people were new. This is a brand new technology, so everyone is new to this. They're exhausted. They've come out with 3 new technologies in the last 18 months. On top of the computer things, they also developed the technology to make LED lights change colors. LED lights used to only come in one color. They would either come in red or they would come in green. Intel made it so that they could go from red to green and back again. They developed that in order to raise money for their silicon chips, right? These guys were just like throwing stuff at the wall and see what stuck, and then they were selling what they didn't have fun with, right? They were going insane over here. So they were spending a lot of money, right? The coffers were rather low, and so the $60,000, which in 1968 was about $500,000 in today's money, a lot of money, yeah. Robert said, absolutely, we'll figure it out. If anybody can make it happen, it's definitely going to be my guys here at Intel. We're going to make it happen. It paid off, I think. Less than a month later, after they were given the plans, His lead engineer, Ted Hoff, came back and said, hey, Robert, instead of 12 memory chips, what if I can make you 4 chips that all just like work together? And Robert said, okay, Ted, you know what? I actually believe in you so much. I'm going to bet the whole house on you. I'm going to give the $60,000 back to Nippon, and I'm going to hire an Italian engineer named Federico Fagin to come and help build your dream into Silicon reality. In 1971, Intel released the 4004, the world's first ever microprocessor. It is the first time that we have a microchip that can be changed by programs inside of it. Right? I don't know if that means anything to anyone. So in the beginning, the old microchips with the memory chips would work kind of like flashcards. So if you wanted to add 2 plus 2 on your computer, you would have to say, get a number 2, get another number 2, count them up, tell me what you got. And you would have to tell your computer to go through each and every step. Whereas this one, this microchip, already knows that it needs to go get the flashcards and count them up and tell you what it is. So you just have to say, hey, what's 2 plus 2? And it can tell you straight away for me. It does all the work for you, right? It was amazing, and it sped things up fantastically, right? And if that's not enough to make it absolutely amazing, right? That's enough for me. But if it's not enough for you, this little guy right here is the actual size of it. Here, it has been blown up so you can see all of the components on it. You can see the thousands of lines of circuitry across 5 layers of silicon. The little black dots that you see on there are the transistors that hold all of the programs inside of them. There are 2,300 transistors on this microprocessor, and all of them were etched by hand by our engineers.
Hand?
Yes, I will show you how we did that in the beginning. It was a very tedious job. So, yes, this was absolutely amazing, and it changed everything, basically. Pretty amazing products. This was released into market in 1971.
Got it. With a skill everyone extend.
And our next microprocessor would be released to market in 1974.
I built for racing.
Oh, so you know that, right? You know about this stuff a little bit?
Yeah, I did all the wiring, extend the plumbing, it.
There you go, yeah. See, I'm not qualified to talk about the plumbing and stuff for the fab facilities, because all I've been told is if one thing goes wrong down there, everything goes wrong every time. So we got to be really careful with that. In 1974, Intel released the 8080 microprocessor, our second microprocessor on market. But in 1974, there was no computer stores. There was no Circuit City or Best Buy or electronics department of Target that you could just go into and buy a computer. The only way you were getting it was if you were sending off $500 to a science magazine. They would send you back the Altair 8800 with all those switches and stuff on the front, the Intel 8080 microprocessor, and then the circuit board you see there. You then, as the engineer, got to build this whole point computer, and then using binary code and the switches on the front as input, you could code your microprocessor to do any job you wanted it to do, electronically erase it, and then reprogram it again. It's the first general purpose microprocessor. Pretty cool, right? Yeah, it doesn't really mean much to anybody until I tell them that this is the same setup that Bill Gates used to code Windows. And then everyone's like, what? Yeah. I don't know how he did it with these switches and zeros and ones, but he made it happen, I guess, right? Yeah, it would take engineers hours and hours and hours to code this processor to do anything. And then to reprogram it or program multiples of them is wild to me. Wow. It also was huge for the engineers, right? They were super excited to finally be able to code at home. However, it's not super accessible unless you are already a computer engineer. Unless you already know binary code, you have a memory for it, or you have the typical space for it, this is not going to be super helpful. That the more versatile computer would be released in 1980. IBM put out the call for engineers to help code a new microprocessor to run their brand new home computer, their home PC. Intel was the ones that answered that call. We released the 8088 microprocessor. Yes, which was twice the size of the 8080, just about. And it now has a special section called a decode unit or a translator unit, in which we have the codes for a keyboard and a screen. This is the first time you don't have to be an engineer in order to use a computer, so it was huge. However, in 1980, there wasn't any kind of internet or social media or video games. This is still a serious scientific device. Right? You're using this if you were working in some kind of Wall Street, something that you have to deal with a lot of big numbers or a lot of patient records in hospitals or attendance records in schools, things of that nature. This was huge. So huge, in fact, that in 1982, Times Magazine named the computer Machine of the Year.
It will come up. There it goes. This machine does not like me. That's a spray. What's it do?
Yeah, well, it doesn't think that I'm a real person.
Oh.
So, yeah. There we go. So, I like to pretend that the reason that we made the computer Machine of the Year in 82 is because Taylor Swift wasn't born until 1989, but, you know, we were still pretty cool, I guess. But it was cool. So, and then we've got Earl. See what I mean? This thing. Earl Edson is the engineer from IBM that developed the computer. Earl and the engineers at IBM worked almost hand in hand with the engineers at Intel, except that they literally had a black curtain between them so as not to share intellectual property. Yes. Really? Yeah, I just think that that's crazy pain. Could you imagine trying to cook in the kitchen with somebody that you can't look at each other or see the ingredients that you're using, and then I can only hint at you what they might probably be? I can't tell you exactly what it is. Sure. That's how the computer was made. That is crazy, Pink.
I have no idea what kind of secret languages they are speaking out there, but it's wild.
All right? That is going to do it for the history portion. Do you guys have any questions, comments, concerns before we move on to science?
Oh, the history stops in the 80s?
Well, for this portion of it, yeah.
Okay.
So we do have the Pentium cases here, and I can talk a little bit about those. One of my favorite stories actually comes from this. So, the 8088 came out in 1980. The 286 came out in 1982. This is the first, the Intel 286 is the first, like, multi-purpose microprocessor. It was used for more than just developing.
Okay.
Oh my goodness, I can't think of the word now.
So here.
Yes, more than just calculating and all of that, more than just keeping records. This is the first time that you were able to have multiple tabs open at the same time. The 386 started integrating sound and movement in pictures, not exactly videos, but, you know, the ability for slides to change and things of that nature. The 486 was not only the very first microprocessor that came with an operating system, it is also the microprocessor that got Intel all the way into the Supreme Court. When Intel released the 486, it had jumped leaps and bounds ahead of all of the other microprocessors on the market. So much so, in fact, that our competitors were not able to actually mimic the technology like they had been with our previous microprocessors. Instead, what they did was they put inferior products into a case that said 486 on the top of them, and then put them out. So Intel kept getting calls from customers being like, your 486 is crap, and we couldn't figure out what was happening, so we'd have them send it in, find out it's not our chip, and it happened again and again and again. And it got to the point that Intel kept making suits that went all the way up to the Supreme Court to put a cease and desist and copyright the 486 for their own microprocessor. Now, you guys are smart. I'm sure you can see the problem with trying to copyright a number. The number 486 could not belong to Intel. Yeah, the Supreme Court basically laughed us out of there. We're like, come on, guys. Come up with something unique, and then we can talk about copyright infringements. So Intel said, fine, we will do that. They went back to the drawing board. The very next processor that came out was the very, very famous Pentium processor, right? And it also launched Intel's Intel Inside sticker campaign. We started putting the stickers on front of all of the computers that had Intel chips inside of them as a promise and reassurance to our customers that they were getting genuine Intel products inside.
Dentist, let's start cat. That is great.
Well, yeah, but now we got a court case. So that's the whole point, right? We're protected for litigation purposes. That's what matters.
I just wonder, like, how do they just keep up with these numbers?
Yeah, so that has to do with the internal, some kind of internal, like, registration system they have. The numbers mean something in the materials that are used and what the design of the structures are. I don't personally know what they are. It's just one of those things. Yeah, but it was easy. And then at the time, too, it would be Intel's 286, and then it would be AMD's 286, and then it would be, TI's 286. Everybody had a 286, and then everybody had a 386.
Yeah.
The problem was that when the 486 came out, we were the only ones that actually had a 486, and then everybody else still just had 386s, and they were scratching off the threes. So, yeah. But then it got to the point that we were like, oh, we actually have to protect ourselves from this. So
You have to come up with an actual name.
yes, yeah. So we had a whole internal employee contest, and then it ended up going with a PR firm. So that used the top 5 names and kind of shuffled them around to figure it out. And so, yeah. Any other questions? Ready for the science? All right, we're going to talk about binary code first.
Really? I don't.
Machine. On the front, we've got the ASCII codes for uppercase English letters. Inside of your microprocessors is that little translation or decode unit. This is what's inside of there. All different sets of codes that you put in whatever you need in your computer and it'll come up for you. All of our computers are done in binary code. Your computer has never learned a different language. It only knows binary. Everything else is in that decode unit. All of the individual numbers on here, every individual 0 and 1, is called a bit. We group them together in 8s, and that makes it a byte. Yes. Now, every byte is a mathematical theorem. I do not know what the theorem is. I just know that it is math, right? The bits represent the transistors, those little black dots on the microprocessor. And then from there, it's very simple. They are either off with no electricity and they are a 0, or they are on. They have electricity and there is a 1. Yeah, it is that simple and that complex, right? If you guys would like, once we're finished here, you can come back and spell out your names in binary code. All you have to do is match it up, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1. We got a B, right, that matches the codes down here. So very fun to think about what it is that your computer is doing every time you're using it, right? All your phones and things like that are doing this. Questions before we move on? Yes.
I just wanted to say my wife, do you want to talk about your dad real quick?
Oh, yeah, he could program in binary.
Yeah. See, yeah, it's
And
a,
assembly language.
yeah, it's a very, very,
Sorry? No, my dad could.
yeah, it's a very, very big skill. And if you can have it, they will pay you good money for it. For good reason, too. I tried learning it, and I will get there one day, I'm sure. So, anyone else?
I did it in college, but I don't remember it now.
I feel like every time I learn it, the minute I look away, it's gone again. Like the silence from Doctor Who. I'm like, wait a minute. So, we ready?
Yeah.
All right. So we talked a little bit at the beginning about silicon. I kind of gloss over it so we can get more into it here. Silicon is a natural insulator. It's kind of a perfect insulator. It doesn't allow static or anything. It's really, really great for basically everything but microchips. Right? It's not going to work if you're trying to just shove electricity through it, which is what we were doing with microchips originally. Here at Intel, what we figured out is if you dope the pure silicon, meaning you adding tiny,
conductive elements to it, we can then turn the silicon into a semiconductor. Well, into a conductor, right? It could be either or. We refer to it as mixing cake batter, and that's true in so much as I'm not going to get it back. Once I mix in my conductive elements into the silicon, I cannot remove them again. Once we get pure silicon, we heat it up in a giant vat to about 4,300 degrees Fahrenheit, and then we add the materials to it. When we heat up the silicon, though, it separates the bonds. And then so what our other materials do, our conductive materials do, is slide in between them, so that when they come back together, there's a wire in between of the conductive material. Yeah, it's all crazy big brain science stuff that, I have a cursory understanding of.
Was that more input there?
That is one of the things that Gordon Moore was like, well, what if we, because he was a chemist. Yeah. And he was a chemist who specialized in combustibles and exothermic reactions. So he liked to make explosions happen. He was really good with figuring out how hot you could get something before it broke. Yeah, so definitely a genius and a wild man to boot. So thank goodness for him. This here now is the 4004, that first microprocessor. This is a kind of in its entirety. All 5 layers you can see through here. There's a mirror in the back so it looks like more, but I promise there's only 5. Each of those layers, when they were that size, were etched out by our engineers on red ruby lith with an X-Acto knife. They would etch out every single line of circuitry, every transistor on every single layer, and then we would photographically shrink it down till it fit on a mask. Then we shine a laser through the mask, through the lens, and onto a wafer. This is the mask here. So it goes from that size to this size, and then we shine a giant UV laser through it. Now, 4,500 transistors is, or 2,300 transistors, 4,500 transistors. That is a tedious job. But people can do that. Today, though, our microprocessors are 40 layers of silicon and about 100 billion transistors. Yeah, we're not doing those by hand anymore. That would be absolute insanity. No. Instead, we have hundreds of engineers working with a computer-aided design or CAD system to do the first part of this process. But we will still print on the mask and then take it to the laser. That process is basically unchanged from the beginning. That's it. Ta-da!
What is the mask made of?
Quartz.
Is it pure quartz?
Yes. Yeah. So it's a quartz mask. So far as I know, it's pure quartz. We haven't gotten any breakdown of it. So there have been, I know maybe you guys have heard about other semiconductor research, talking about using lab-grown diamonds and the like, and understand that this process in and of itself is very expensive. Not just like this process, but like getting all the materials and the building for all of this. This is very expensive. Lab-grown diamonds are still about 1,000 times more expensive than this right now. Yeah, so if we can figure out how to streamline that process, I'm all for it. But until such a time, this is the best and cheapest way to make semiconductor microchips happen. Wow. Fun fact, the lasers that we use from ASML were actually partially developed by engineers at Intel. In the very beginning, they've been making our lasers to do this process from the beginning, and they needed to be jiggered with in order to do the exact job that we needed them to do. So Intel engineers went all the way over there to help refine the lasers. Yeah. Questions, comments, concerns?
So this is growing right along with laser technology as well.
It kind of worked hand in hand. They kind of walked together. Yeah. So as we get more into it too, you'll see how tight-knit this kind of community really is. So I I'm trying to think. Are you guys interested in what the microchips are, like size-wise, or do you want to skip right to Moore's law?
No, we don't have to skip.
Moore's law. All right, we'll just walk around this way. Then we'll go straight to Moore's law.
Okay.
I just told you guys that our transistors went from 2,300, 4,500, and now we've got 100 billion transistors on our microprocessors. The reason for that, or not really the reason, but that happening, I guess, we call Moore's law. In 1965, Gordon Moore was approached by Science magazine, and they asked him, hey, where are those integrated circuits that your buddy Bob invented? Where are those going? And Gordon said, they're going to be everywhere. He said, one day these things are going to be so cheap to make and sell. They're going to be common, and they're going to be in everything from toys to kitchen appliances to automobiles. He said, one day we're going to have telephones in our pockets. Like, they're going to go everywhere. They're going to be in everything. And everyone, you know, like before, was like, oh, okay, sure. How? How is that going to happen? And Gordon Moore said, well, that's easy. The number of transistors is going to double every 2 years, and that's going to make them cheaper to make. Everyone said, well, why would they do that? He said, it's easy, because people will have access to these chips, and then they're going to want more from them, so they're going to make more from them. And then more people are going to get them because they're going to be cheaper to make now. More people are going to get them, and then they'll have ideas, and then they'll make them happen. And they'll be even cheaper now because we're using less space, less materials, and all of this, and they're stronger. And it's going to keep going like that. They're just going to keep doubling so they can get stronger and cheaper and faster. And the more people that get their hands on it, the faster they're going to grow, the more they're going to grow. And it's going to go on forever and ever and ever, so long as people keep wanting things from their electronics. Seems pretty easy, right? Now, he wrote the article in 1965. They started talking about it basically before the ink dried, right? Because he's a legend, right? Gordon Moore is already a legend. So they want to know what he has to say about this. People are talking about it. They're talking about it in computer colleges and economic colleges and all kinds of classes. And Carver Mead, a professor at Caltech, I think it was giving a speech on this article that Gordon Moore wrote, and he felt that the title of the article was too cumbersome. So he referred to it as Moore's Law, and it stuck. The name of it stuck. Now here's the thing. Gordon Moore was a chemist. He believed in the laws of nature, natural laws, Newton's laws of physics, things like that. Moore's Law is not a law of nature. So Gordon Moore was a little irked that that's what they called it. He's like, this is just me running my mouth. This is not...
It's an opinion.
Yeah, he was like, he's like, it's a well-informed opinion. But yeah, this is not a law of nature. He preferred his name for the paper, which was cramming more components onto integrated circuits. He said, this is what we're doing. We're just cramming stuff on there. Yeah. And that's like the dirty little secret too of the computer industry is this is what we're doing. We just keep cramming stuff onto stuff until it fails, and then we take one off. That's how your stuff gets to market. Like, it's amazing how that happens, right? This is true. Moore's Law has continued since 1950s really, when the first integrated circuit was invented, but since 1965. I tell all the kids during this part of the tour that if they go onto YouTube and search up Moore's Law, they will get a site that says Moore's Law is dead. Yeah, I tell them all the time, if you ever hear anyone say to you that Moore's Law is dead, run far away from them. Because the number one law for Moore's Law is that it only stops when innovation stops. So if somebody says to you, Moore's Law is over, Moore's Law is dead, Moore's Law is not real anymore, they don't have any new ideas, and you should just walk away from them. They don't have anything to say to you that you can't read in a book. Right? You guys ready to see where we make the chips?
Yep.
All right. Now this is where you will have to try to actively keep in your brain that this is a very serious industry, despite of all of the silly names. Okay? This here is our fabrication facility. All right, our fab. This is the very, very super hyper technical area that I am not allowed to talk about. I'm not qualified to talk about the bottom part of this. However, this top floor I have been trained to tell you about. This top floor is the fan deck, nothing but fans, kind of like that one, but way bigger. They blow the air down and out through the holes of the clean room floor. And what that does is it recycles the air inside of here about 10 times every single minute. What that does is it clears out any dirt or dust that would be floating around in the air. The reason for that is that our microchip circuitry is nanometers wide, and dust is millimeters big. A millimeter doesn't feel very big to us because we are humongous. However, if there was a city bus floating through the air in here, we would not feel very safe. That is what dust looks like to our microchips. So we want to make sure that stays off of there. We do that with the filtration system here. And we have our fabrication engineers in these highly specialized clean room suits. They are bunny people in bunny suits. That's what we call them. That is the only thing we have ever called them, right? Sometimes you have to remember this is a serious business, guys, okay? So our bunny people in here are wearing these highly specialized suits. And because we use a UV laser, we cannot have any free UV rays inside of the clean room. So all of the lights inside of here have been re-engineered to let off zero UV light, and there are no outside doors or windows into this clean room. There's just orange light in here, right? Inside of the facility, you can see these canisters here. They are up there on the wall. Those are called front opening unified pods. That's the name that we put down on the tax forms. We call them FOOPs. Bunnies and FOOPs in the lab here, guys. Those FOOPs carry 25 wafers in the front of them, kind of like a multi-disc CD changer. The barcode on the front tells our engineers what microchip they're going to become. And then they travel through the clean room facility on a monorail track, kind of like an upside down subway car. All right? If you look, you can see that they're different colors. The black ones denote just regular everyday materials. Orange and red specifically denote copper. Because copper is super caustic in the lab against other materials, we have to make sure it stays segregated. Everything is very, very delicate inside of the lab. If you give a quick little spin, this is the part that everyone bowls over about. Back here is our life cycle of silicon. We get it from sand, right? And then this is what we turn it into. We melt it down in that giant vat. We stick a starter seed, kind of like a little piece of silicon into the middle, and then we spin as we pull up, kind of like when you make cotton candy, until we get this 12-inch in diameter ingot. Now, this one here is about 300 pounds, 270-ish pounds. Pretty big guy, right? It's solid here on the wall. This is a quarter of the size of the ones that we use inside of the facility. Those ones are way longer and much, much heavier, but they are all 12 inches in diameter. We have found that this is the largest we can make our wafers right now without them shattering into a bajillion pieces when we cut them. So this is what we're working with right now. They started out on 2-inch wafers. That's some of the ones that you'll see in the very early stages, right, of the museum here. But we got bigger and better materials, bigger and better at our job. You guys can come up and knock on this. It's nice and solid. And what I think is really great, especially in the summertime, is because this is an insulator, it doesn't transfer heat. So it stays nice and cool all summer long.
Is that a slice of it there?
This is the wafer, yeah. So we'll slice this down with a diamond saw until we get these millimeters thick wafers, polish them up till they're mirror smooth, and then we start the photolithography. Take it to the giant laser. So right around the corner there, I'll give you guys a few minutes.
So if there's no outside door, how do people get in?
An air show.
You have to go. I've done that.
Yeah.
You
it's
have to go
amazing.
through different, and it sucks all the air out. And you,
Yep.
yeah. I had to be in one of those suits.
Yes. Well, see, we do have the suits here too. If you guys want to try them on, you can do that. But early on, 1968, we figured out that the fashion of the day was not doing us any good inside the West. So we put the call out to all of our friends in the area and said, hey, can anyone help us figure out a way to keep the dirt and dust and stuff falling onto our microchips, and also maybe protect our engineers from caustic materials, because I guess they're important too. I don't know. Andy said something about it. So who answered the call, right, was NASA. NASA came back and was like, we have the most perfect thing for you guys. They helped us develop our first clean room suits in 1970. They were implemented across our labs by 1973. Every single technician was wearing them. And then they were introduced to the world at large in 1997 with a Super Bowl commercial, introducing one of our Pentium processors. Pretty neat, right? Now, they are largely unchanged from when we got them. They all basically look like this. There is no reason that they are called bunny suits other than somebody put it on one day and saw that their bottom sagged like when bunnies sit up on their hind legs. That's all it was. Yeah, very serious industry, guys, okay? Very, very serious. So there is a 15-step process, some of you guys have already seen it, into getting into a bunny suit.
Yeah.
You have to follow that process every single time you get into a suit. And anytime, once you're already inside of that clean room facility, you need to get a drink of water, use the restroom, take your federally mandated lunch break. You would have to walk back through the air shower, remove the suits, go do your thing, come back and do it all over again with a brand new suit.
I had to go in the field and do that one time.
Yeah, I think once would have been plenty enough for me. Trying to get in and out of these things here, or putting the kids in and out of these things
Takes a
here,
long time.
just gives me, it gives me even more appreciation. So I was a firefighter for 4 years, and I cannot get into this thing in less than 4 minutes. I don't know how they're doing it. So, and then of course we've got the standouts here, so you can have yourself a little picture moment if you'd like. But we do have one more stop before I release you to the wild.
It was hard to work in that suit. I could solder things.
Oh, yeah, I can't even imagine, especially with the gloves on.
And you had to
stuff.
climb up and try to solder inside that suit.
Oh, no, not for me, yeah. So this is Bob. Robert Noyce, a legend, right? And he was legendary even before Intel. And pretty much everyone that has met him said that what made him even more legendary was that he made you feel like a legend. Whenever you spoke to him, he gave you his attention, and he did not care what your background was, where you came from. He knew that people made things happen. And so he went into every instance, every relationship thinking, this is the guy that's going to make the difference happen. Robert Noyce, one of Robert Noyce's most prolific quotes is, do not be encumbered by history, go off and do something wonderful. We believe really big in doing wonderful here at Intel. It's why it's even the name of our volunteer community is Do Wonderful. I, however, like to end my tours borrowing from my personal hero, Mr. Fred Rogers, and remind you all that you are the most wonderful thing that you get to do, so go do wonderful. Thank you guys so much. I've been Kelly. It's the end of the tour.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thank you. Sure.
The ASML technology, that's all on the third floor of that fab stack, or is it totally different?
Sometimes so it is actually in a different facility in itself, because the laser itself is 4 stories. So that is a whole different facility that does that work, and then this comes after the wafers.
Okay.
Yeah.